In The Unbearable Lightness of Being, Thomas, Theresa, Sabina, and Franz are all central characters. Their stories weave together throughout the book, moving back and forth in time. It's like contrapuntal music. Your lives are interconnected, yet each one stands alone. Franz is a university professor. He's a handsome man, right at the peak of his academic career. In the debates among experts, his brilliance and sheer determination were so formidable that even his peers found him intimidating. Yet for the past few months, this married man has been completely captivated by a woman. Her name is Sabina. Franz cherished this love deeply, so he went to great lengths to protect it. Even though he commanded immense respect from his peers in academia, what truly preoccupied him was the constant fear that the woman he loved would leave him. For Franz, love wasn't just an extension of social life. In fact, it was the complete opposite to him. Love meant a deep desire to surrender to the will and control of another person, like a soldier laying down his arms. As a married man, he found himself constantly shifting between two women each day, sometimes starting with his wife, then moving to his mistress, or the other way around. Unlike Thomas, whom we discussed earlier and who actually enjoyed moving between women, Franz saw this double life as something flawed, mistake, and a kind of emptiness. His married life with his wife was largely uneventful. Still, they continued to share a bed. At night, he'd be woken by her sharp breathing, lying there inhaling each other as smells. He would have preferred to sleep alone, but sharing a bed remained a symbol of marriage. Symbols, as we know, aren't meant to be broken. Every time he got into bed beside his wife, he couldn't help thinking of his lover, Sabina. He even wondered if Sabina might be imagining him there, lying next to his wife at that very moment. The thought filled him with shame. That is why he wished the bed he shared, so his wife Marie would believe he had a good reason to be away. That way, his mistress Sabina could have as much of his time as she wanted. If he didn't love his wife, then why did Franz end up with Marie in the first place? Years ago, they had only known each other for a few months when Marie threatened him. She said if Franz abandoned her, she would kill herself. It wasn't misery or anger driving her, but something she called love. A love so grand, so overwhelming, that Franz felt he ought to bow deeply before it, and so he bowed up. I lecked the way to his knees. I lecked the way to his knees. I lecked the way to his deep down. He held one firm and absolute rule. He must never hurt Marie, Claude, and must always respect the woman within her. Why respect the woman within her? Was Marie possessed by someone? Yes, but also no. What Franz was reluctant to admit was this: the woman inside Marie was actually his own mother. When Franz was about 12, his father suddenly left without a word. His mother was left all alone. Franz sensed something serious had happened, but to protect him from the pain, she downplayed it carefully, hiding the truth that his father had abandoned them. All Franz remembers from that day is walking together through the city, when he noticed his mother was wearing mismatched shoes. He wanted to say something, but he was afraid of embarrassing her. So he walked with his mother for 2 hours through the city, unable to take his eyes off her feet. From that moment on, Franz truly understood what pain was. He loved his mother deeply, from the time he was a child, right up until the day he laid her to rest. I still love her in my memories. That's why he held on to this belief. Loyalty is a virtue. It gives our lives a sense of wholeness and unity. Without it, life just shatters into a million fleeting moments. Later, Franz met Sabina. He even started bringing up his mother frequently, hoping to attract her. He thought Sabina would be drawn to his loyal nature. But he was wrong. His lover Sabina valued betrayal above all else, not loyalty, because the word loyalty made her think of her father, strict father, and her father's father, and his father before him. It was a whole line of fathers. In our dictionary, it's a negative term, but in Sabina's mind, there was nothing more wonderful than betrayal. What is betrayal? We were taught from childhood that betrayal is just about the most hateful thing you can imagine. But for Sabina, betrayal meant breaking free from her position and rushing headlong into the unknown. The unknown world was intoxicating. To Sabina, nothing was more wonderful than throwing herself into it. So she kept on betraying. She went to art school, but the academy wouldn't let her paint like Picasso. You had to follow the so-called realist style. Back then, the art academy was all about painting portraits of the leader. Sabina's desire to betray her father still wasn't satisfied, because to her, the academy's rules felt like another father, just as strict and narrow. The school banned Picasso, so in the end, Sabina painted these strange, abstract pieces instead. The academy also forbade love affairs, so Sabina married a mediocre prog actor. Simple reason: he had a rebellious streak and a bad reputation. After they married, she realized he was actually very conventional and family-oriented. So once again, she felt that deep urge to betray. She told her husband she was leaving him, and that was how Sabina ended her first marriage. After the Prague Spring, when Russian troops invaded the capital, there was a major protest against the Soviet invasion. During one demonstration, some young people raised their fists, shouting slogans against Soviet imperialism. She liked the sound of those slogans, but to her own surprise, she found she couldn't bring herself to shout along with the crowd. So she only stayed with the group for a few minutes before leaving. Later, she told her friends about this experience. They were surprised. Your country was invaded, and you didn't even want to fight back. Didn't even want to say was this. What felt even worse to her than the invasion wasn't the invaders, which was the rows of people marching together, waving their arms, chanting in unison, shouting the same slogans. In other words, what repulsed her wasn't the ugliness of the world, but the pretty mask it wore. Or to put it another way, kitsch. She knew she couldn't explain this to her friends. It made her uncomfortable, so she'd rather change the subject. What is kitsch? It's the term Milan Kundera used, German word, kitsch. Here's an example to help you understand. Imagine a formal ceremony. Everyone is dressed up in fancy clothes, holding balloons and bouquets, celebrating together. As the protest march moved into the camera's view, even the most miserable faces instantly broke into bright, cheerful smiles, as if they had to prove that this was the joy they were supposed to feel, to earn that sense of belonging. Take our college entrance exam rallies, for example. We'd all chant slogans about giving it our all for 100 days, full of adrenaline. Even if you totally bombed your last practice test, even if you were exhausted and just wanted to run, you still had to shout at the top of your lungs. You had to act like victory was certain, like you knew this was just what you were supposed to do. We all have the right to feel our emotions spontaneously, whether it's excitement, being moved, exhilaration, sadness, joy, or compassion. But what's sickening is when some outside force tries to make you feel those things. The book tells another vivid story about this, set about 10 years later. By then, Sabina was already living in the U.S. One of her friends was an American woman. Once, while watching children running across a lawn, this American friend turned to Sabina, pointed at them, and said, "Look at them. I think this is what happiness looks like." But this friend wasn't just innocently celebrating the sight of playing kids in green grass. What she was really doing was imposing her own idea of what Sabina, woman from an invaded European country, should feel. Because in this American friend's mind, in Sabina's homeland, after the invasion, grass wouldn't grow, and children wouldn't run. But this American friend had her own idea of what Sabina, a woman who had emigrated from an invaded European country, should be. Because in this American friend's mind, in Sabina's homeland after the enemy's invasion, the grass wouldn't grow, and the children wouldn't run. But how could this American friend know that the children she saw running on the grass were truly happy? What if they were just pretending, like kids so often do? Couldn't these kids, with all their posturing, just be faking it? And what about the attitude of these children? Couldn't that be a complete performance too? Couldn't the very attitude of these children be a total act? How could he be so sure that the kids he saw running on the grass were a picture of happiness? What if the moment these kids are out of his sight? What if 3 of those kids just turned on the other one and started bullying him? There's only one basis for this conclusion, and that's his own feelings. But when the heart speaks, it's just not right for reason to shout it down. What rules in the kingdom of Kitsch is actually the dictatorship of the heart. Seeing children running on the grass moves us deeply, and all of humanity sheds to tears. The first tear says, "How buff to beautiful, look at those children running on the grass." It's a genuine emotion. But the second tear says, "How beautiful, to be moved, right along with all of humanity, by the sight of children running on the grass." This is forcing an emotion, and that second tear is the very embodiment of Kitsch. Sabina is also someone who loves her homeland. Otherwise, she wouldn't have joined the protest march. She often worried for her country, too. The reason Sabina withdrew from that march back then was because she detested Kitsch. Sabina loves betrayal. Her entire life has been devoted to it. And the word betrayal itself seems to encompass being anti-Kitsch. In contrast, Franz loved that kind of parade. Franz attended university in Paris. He was exceptionally gifted. By the age of 20, his academic path was set. From that moment on, he knew his whole life would be spent within the walls of a university office, public libraries, and 2 or 3 lecture halls. Franz loved demonstrations, rallies, and protests. Celebrating a cause, or petitioning against something, it meant he wasn't alone anymore. Being out there with others made him feel better. To Franz, a life buried in books felt artificial. He craved real life. He longed for physical connection with the men and women marching beside him. He wanted to hear their shouts. He believed that in affluent societies, manual labor had disappeared. Everyone worked with their minds. There were more and more universities, more and more students. To get their degrees, they had to find thesis topics. And since you could write about absolutely anything, the number of topics was endless. Those bundles of darkening papers in the archives were sadder than any graveyard. Culture was dying, drowned in a flood of words and meaningless quantity. Franz preferred countries in the thick of revolution. In those places, a single Ben book meant more than all the empty chatter spouted in his university. Then one day, Sabina appeared like a ghost. She came from a small town, from a country Franz saw as the very soul of pure revolution, the tragic suffering of her homeland, which she carried with her, made her even more beautiful. So Franz loved what was real. But what is? The moment you start thinking about the public being there, you're already living a lie. Because the moment you have an audience, your actions become a performance. Sabina had no respect for literature that exposed every last bit of personal privacy, jate that of one's friends. Sabina believed that losing your privacy meant losing everything, and anyone who'd willingly give up their private life, well, that person is a monster. One evening, Franz was packing for his trip to Rome the next day. His wife Marie came into his room and started talking about the guests from the night before. She began criticizing some of the opinions she'd heard, her tone sharp and sarcastic. Franz just looked at Marie for a long moment. Then he said, "Actually, there is no academic conference." Confused, she asked, "Then why are you packing? Where are you going?" Franz replied, "I have a lover." It has been going on for 9 months. I don't want to meet her here in Geneva, due else why I travel so often. I think it's better, I'm honest with you from the start. After saying those first few words, Franz got scared. His initial courage had vanished. He turned away, unable to look his wife Marie in the face. After saying those first few words, Franz was afraid of the despair they might bring to his wife. But after a few minutes of silence, Maria's voice came back, calm and clear. "Yes," she said. "I also think it is better you're honest with me from the start." In other words, what had become of that image he always associated with his mother? His mother, tragic, wounded woman, who wore mismatched shoes to protect him, who never told him the truth about his father abandoning them. An image of his mother seemed to have faded from Marie. Or maybe Marie was never the way he imagined her at all. Perhaps his mother had never really been a part of Marie in the first place. He realized this suddenly, and a wave of anger, a burning, furious anger swept over him. "Do you still want me to stay? Do 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 you still want me? Soon after, Franz met Sabina at the airport. As the plane took off, he felt a growing sense of relief. 9 months later, he thought, he was finally starting to live in truth again. He was going to divorce Marie. He was going to be with Sabina. But for Sabina, this was a complete disaster. It was as if Franz had forced open the door to her private life. Franz told her he would get a divorce. Sabina felt like she was about to take Marie's place in a giant marriage bed. People nearby would stare at her. She'd have to put on an act in front of everyone. She wouldn't be Sabina anymore, just forced to play the role of Sabina, for her. Love becomes heavy the moment it is made public. It turns into a burden. Just thinking about it made her shoulders slump under the weight. She knew this would be the last time she ever saw Franz. Today was the last time. The final, irreversible last time. Of course, Sabina knew her decision was deeply unfair. Because Franz was the most exceptional man she had ever met. He was brilliant. He understood her. He was kind, honorable, and handsome. But the more she saw his qualities, the more she wanted to trample on them. To trample on his intelligence, his kindness, and his fragile strength. After one last moment of tenderness, Sabina left Franz and disappeared without a trace. Yet his lover, Sabina, was terrified by this kind of loyalty, so she left him. Once again, Franz was abandoned. Loyalty was like a curse for Franz. No matter what he did, he couldn't escape the pain it brought him. If betrayal was Sabina's way of rebelling against Kitsch, then Franz's loyalty was to her